Kia ora, hello and welcome to another video in our series on the ISA for LCE, or the auditing standard for less complex entities. This one we've titled Navigating the ISA for LCE. Today we'll have a look inside the standard, so its structure. We'll look at the different parts of the standard, including the appendices, and then we'll finish off by having a look at the layout of the standard and how to read it. Now let's have a look at what's inside the standard. So the beginning of the standard is the preface, and then Part A, the authority, which the auditor uses to determine whether or not they can use the ISA for LCE. So really, is the entity a less complex entity or not? The standard's been structured to follow the flow of an audit, starting with matters that are overarching to the audit. So at Part 1, we've got the fundamental concepts and general principles. Part 2, the overall audit evidence and documentation requirements. And Part 3, engagement quality management. Then we get into the procedural requirements. So this is where the audit's undertaken, the acceptance and continuance stage of Part 4, planning in Part 5, then risk identification and assessment at Part 6, then responding to those assessed risks of material misstatement at Part 7, then concluding, and then finally in Part 9, forming the opinion and the audit report. Now there are additional requirements applicable solely in the context of an audit of financial statements of a group. That's at Part 10. And when the auditor undertakes the audit of service performance information and possibly entity information, they'll use Part 11 alongside the rest of the ISA for LCE. And finally, there are some appendices which we'll look at later. The ISA for LCE can be used when the audit of service performance information and possibly entity information is included in the scope of the audit. Part 11 has been designed to follow the flow of an audit of service performance information of less complex entities. At the end of the standard are various appendices, starting off with the glossary of terms at Appendix 1. And this contains a list of terms and their definitions for the purpose of the ISA for LCE. Now if you use our standards navigator, the definitions will automatically appear when you click on the defined word. In Appendix 2 we have illustrative engagement letters. Now there's two. One is for the audit of general purpose financial statements, and the other is to be used when the auditor uses Part 11 to audit service performance information alongside the audit of financial statements. Then at Appendix 3, there's a chart that illustrates the iterative nature of the auditor's risk identification and assessment in accordance with Part 6. Appendix 4 sets out examples of factors that may be faced by auditors during an audit of a less complex entity. Appendix 5 lists out the categories of assertions, and these also include assertions relevant to Part 11, the audit of service performance information. In Appendix 6, we have some factors that the auditor may consider when determining the sample size for tests of control and tests of detail. And finally, at Appendix 7, we've got some illustrative representation letters. And just like engagement letters, there's two illustrations here, one for an audit of general purpose financial statements, and another when the auditor uses Part 11 to audit service performance information alongside the audit of financial statements. Then finally at the end of the standard are some conforming amendments arising from the ISA for LCE that impact other assurance standards. So each part in the ISA for LCE is structured in the same way. As you see on screen, it starts off with an introduction that broadly explains the content and scope of that particular part. Then there's the objectives, which link the requirements of the part with the overall objectives of the auditor. Then there's the necessary requirements for the auditor to undertake, and then relevant EEM or essential explanatory material, which is shown in those blue boxes. So now we've navigated our way through the ISA for LCE. For more information on the standard, please go to our website. Stay tuned to our audit and assurance alerts for further information. Thank you for watching. Mā te wā.